Hello and welcome to another podcast of What Does It Mean to Be Human? We talk about life, meaning, and everything. I'm Ron Saylor, the Creative Warrior, joined by my good friend, co-host Ben Gare, another warrior, another spiritual being, and we're just two blokes having a chat about life and what it means to be human in this life that we live in, 2022, currently right now. So, Ben, what's been happening, mate?
Definitely been a week. Definitely theme for the week has been grief for me, and grief is always those difficult emotions to really truly feel. I find it's like you can have sadness or depression, but that's kind of slightly different. But grief is that kind of deep in the soul part of you that's wanting to, yeah, feel that sadness on a different level, so yeah, just part of my life has come back sort of into focus and looking for healing. And I've been presented with just a process that was a bit unexpected at the time. And I'm definitely hearing it around with clients and stuff as well, saying that seems to be that deep grief is another theme at the week. So who knows what that's about? But yeah, and it's also coming into the week of my birthday. I always find that energy is a little bit more introspective as well, because it's the time to analyze life and where you're at and what's been going on, and are we totally happy with where we are at the age we're coming into, or is this our expectation, or how did we get here, and all those good things. So it feels like definitely a pressure cooker kind of going on at the moment, with a few different things competing for my attention, and it's just like, I'm at my capacity, that's for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, man. I think it's true in what you're saying. Like we're all kind of familiar. There's like when we talk about the emotional spectrum, we all kind of use words like happy or sad.
Mhm.
Um, Rarely do people say I'm angry. They may say I'm frustrated, but we know underlining under all
Yep.
frustration, confusion, boredom is probably some kind of anger. But
Yep.
grief, tapping into true grief, it takes courage, and it really takes courage to be a warrior to tap into your grief, because some of it can be really deep, like you're saying, deep soul, and it's
Yeah.
a with a, and when it comes up, because it almost kind of it's kind of like being hit by a truck sometimes. Like you really
Yeah.
get not crippled, but you really get that sense where like you almost like the life's being taken out of you. It's almost like a gaping wound that's deep in the soul, deep in the body.
Mm.
That's something, stepping into that to address it is really important for healing long term. It's not
Totally.
something I'd say you want to step into on a regular basis, especially if this is the beginning of your journey. Because if you go down too far too soon, you may just, feel more than what you can handle. So it's always important just to check where you're at and just feel what you can and to acknowledge it. And I think, you kind of through that in this, you've done a lot of work on yourself. So you kind of know yourself already, and you know
Mm.
your level, you know what your thresholds are, you know what your limitations are, you know what your triggers are, and you can kind of like see what's happening and knowing what you need to do to give yourself some love, to give yourself some healing, give
Mm.
yourself some time to, to process, to integrate, to go through what you need to push through to the other side. And I guess the important thing is actually acknowledging that it's there, because it's too easy for us a lot of the time just to go, oh yeah, I'm going through this, and I'm a bit pissed off, or a bit sad, and it's kind of it's just a bit of surface kind of lip service that we kind of give to ourselves and to the people we're talking to. I don't know how many of you out there, when you feel that way, you kind of stop and go, well, what's really going on? What does it mean for me? Shall I address this? Shall I look a little bit further? Is this an opportunity for me just to sit still, just for like, just to pause and ask myself, well, what's really going on? Why am I feeling this way? what could have been the trigger? Is it something I saw? Has it brought up a memory? Is it something I did? Is it something someone did to me? Did I see other people doing something? You know, where's this stimulus come from? Where's this memory come from? Where's this trigger come up that we kind of feeling this kind of emotion? And take an opportunity to kind of pause into that and go, okay, where am I feeling this? You know, where in my body am I feeling this? And how does it make me feel? What's the emotion that I feel with this, you know? And, you know, then what do I do with it now that I can feel it? Well, you don't have to do anything with it, right? It's just there. You're just going to acknowledge it for what it is. And it doesn't mean it's going to define you or, you know, make you your day or whatever, make you who you are or change the way you have to live your life. It's, you just really take it a moment just to pause. And a lot of this stuff comes in like that moment where you pause just to be aware. You know, having that awareness just gives you an extra depth into who you are and how you function and what your purpose is, you know, and what you are here to do, whether you're here to serve, whether you're here to, you know, offer something, to give something, or, you know, just to be a presence or whatever you're here to do in your capacity as a human being. But it gives you an opportunity to delve into that and to give you a bit more perspective from different angles, different views, you know, on you, others, the world, everything around you. So, man, I totally hear what you're saying. And it's, you know, it may be such a simple statement, like, you know, but there's so much depth to what you're saying. It's quite profound, the fact that you're going through grief at a deep level, because grief is like all emotions, will always come back and address them on a different level. You know, we did breath work, rebirthing for a long time, and we, you know, we tore layers off, like, you know, like Shrek says, and like he's an onion, you know, we constantly were tearing layers of this bloody onion and just going deeper and deeper and deeper. There's always going to be a layer that's going to come up which you need to address. And the path to healing is through awareness around that. And it can be through your breath, it can be through movement, it can be through body work, it can be through psychedelics, it can be through psychology. There's always a means, there's always an avenue that you can address it, right? You may need several, who knows? You may need none. But just having the awareness of what do I need in this moment? Okay, what do I need to do? And then just do it. And then just accept it and know that you're going to be okay, and consider what's the worst case. I mean, okay, what's the worst case scenario that could happen from the way I'm feeling this way, and just acknowledge it. So an example for, you know, something that's for me this week, having resistance, right, around taking action steps to live my life, being of service, you know, not being a victim, but just being a creator in this world, you know, and me having resistance. So I ask myself, you know, what's the main emotion that I'm going through? And my main key things that I grew up with was like, you know, I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy, and then I'm powerless. So those three things will always come up when I'm challenged, whether it's my belief patterns, whether it's my mindset, whether it's my ego, whether whatever it may be, my orientation, how I navigate through life, those things tend to come up. And then I address them. Okay, so which one of them is the main one that I'm dealing with? Is it not being good enough? Is it that I'm not worthy of this, or am I feeling powerless and incapable, right? So I've got to say, okay, which one is it? There's always going to be one that's going to dominate the other depending on the situation. And then it's like, okay, what's the main emotion I feel in this? And I sit and ask myself, what is it? You know, more times than not, it's anger, right? Other times it's grief, like deep grief, like what you're talking about. Or it could be sadness. Sometimes it's rarely a happy one or a positive emotion, because around my blockages and around my resistance and around my belief patterns, they're anchored in, let's call them negative visions or negative emotions. So they're the ones I go through. And then I ask myself, what's a compensating strategy? Like what is something that I do to avoid me taking action? And it may be, well, I just don't follow through. I'll do it half-assed. Or you know what, if it's someone's irking me, like family, for example, well, then I'm going to just get angry and have a go at them so I can show them that, you know, I'm a man and, you know, they can't talk to me like this. I have to go back and have a go at them, seeking revenge. They're kind of compensating strategies. Like, what are you doing to compensate so you're not dealing with what's going on?
Yeah.
And then I ask myself, you know what? What's the worst case scenario in this situation? Well, the worst case scenario could be, well, my guidance said you need to take an action step and you need to contact this friend that you haven't spoken to in a long time. For whatever reason, that just came up. Now, I'm going to ask myself, why haven't I contacted that person? Is it because I don't feel good enough, not worthy, am I powerless? Which one is it? What's the main emotion around that? And then what's my compensating strategy? Well, I'll just leave it for another week. Then it goes 2 weeks. Then it goes 3 weeks. Next thing you know, it's in the background, but it's constantly still working because I haven't addressed what's going on. Then I'll say, well, what's the worst case scenario if I don't contact this person? Well, I may never speak to them again. Okay, well, I may never speak to them again. That's a possibility. Does it mean anything though? Well, only what you want to give it. It only means what you want it to mean. So it's, you know, I'm talking a lot about this process because it's kind of a process that I go through, and Ben, you can probably share a process that you go through, how you deal with this sort of stuff. This is just an example, guys, of like, how can we deal with things that come up for us? And, you know, we're always going to have emotions. We're always going to have a level of anxiety. We're always going to have something that kind of challenges us in ourselves, with our friends, family, partners, those around us, the world, everything, right? It's how do we deal with those things? What tools do we use? You know, this is just an example of what I use. I'm not saying you have to go and do that. You don't have to do any of this, right? Finding a tool that works for you is important. So maybe, Ben, you can share, mate, an example, or like certain tools that you use to address what you've been going through and what your process has been, and how you kind of going to work through to push through this, or see what you need to do around it.
Yeah, I just want to quickly address too one other little thing there that you kind of touched on, but we can suppress positive emotions as well. That's not often acknowledged or really thought, that why would you suppress joy or happiness or something or other, you know, like it seems like a bit of a weird one. But just to know that it can happen as well, because it's like, imagine the scenario where you're bouncing off the walls and your mum or dad's like quite down, like take the edge off a little bit, you know, and so you start to squash down that natural expression of being super happy. So you get a negative association with it. So therefore it can start to create an idea that I can't express happiness as a general thing. So yeah, just to acknowledge it, not all emotions have to be negative ones in terms of what needs to be processed or how that comes out. It's a bit of a weird one, but yeah.
You know, that's a great point, man. Totally.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well said.
And in terms of how I'm dealing with this one, it's just like, yeah, this is kind of, it was the end of probably one of the biggest relationships of my life. It was 5 years ago. And I'm a bit slow in terms of, I like to kind of sit with the processing of the emotions. Not that I like to, it's just that's my life. Do you know what I mean? So it makes me a better person to actually take my time with it. I don't sort of rush through moving on or anything like that. It's like, I know things are going to take whatever time they take, and generally my time is a little bit slow. So yeah, it was 2 years ago when I was in Peru, was being open to opening this conversation again with this person. And that was already 3 years at that point. And that was just how long it took me to kind of course I'd moved on and life was changing and things were still happening, but it was like, oh, I'm in an emotionally strong place that I can invite this person I deeply love back into my life. And yeah, that just started the healing process, you know, ultimately. And yeah, this week, so it's another 2 years since almost all of that, because a lot of my dieta time in Peru, sitting with ayahuasca, was healing relationships. And because that was one of my biggest, it was very much the time to begin to open that box that I'd kind of not shut away. It was just not time yet, you know. So yeah, now I'm pretty much in a big round 2 of that this week. And yeah, look, that there's like you say, there's many ways to kind of process it. I definitely thought it was just going to be sitting with it this week. Like I had the intent just to be still with it. At least on the first day, it was very much sort of constantly feeling like the tears wanting to come, but no access point for them to actually let go. And this is why I say grief is a bit of a tricky one, because again, sadness is different than grief. Grief is that sobbing of the soul, it's that, like, the real deep part of uncontrollable let go of sadness. Like to me, it's the deeper cut. Sadness is just the surface layer of what that looks like in your pervading reality. But yeah, as the tears were there, there was not enough trigger to tip over into it. Do you know what I mean? And truly let go within the emotion itself. And that didn't come until day 2. And yeah, like I was even like, again, was thinking to sit with it. And then my neighbor's like, oh, come and just hang out and have a game of pool and don't worry about your stuff, even though it's there, it's still going to be there, And I'm like, no, I'm going to sit with it. I'm just going to sit with it. And I actually got inspired in one moment to just go, and it was actually just hanging with a friend was actually enough access point for me to truly drop into sobbing and crying. And he's used to me seeing me that way, so it's not unusual. Not that I live in it all the time. It's just like being free with your emotions is the point, and he's accepting of it and has no judgment, and all's welcome within our space, so yeah, and that was just it, just have company. And yeah, I reached out to this person again in that day and shared some really deep truths of what my reality was at the time, and even still now, and that was healing as well. But yeah, look, because this was a biggie, I didn't want to distract from it. Normally there could be time and place for microdosing psychedelics. Mushrooms are something I find are a great one for deep held emotions moving, but I even felt that was probably too much at this place, or it would just take it in a direction that I didn't feel I wanted to go. And yeah, just being present to it. I think being present to emotions is probably the best healing that can really happen. Don't shove it away and don't wallow in it, on the opposite ends of the spectrum there. That both are okay to be with, as long as it's not getting too long. I think we've talked about this before, as long as it's not getting weeks down the track and you're still there, but it's okay to take a day or two to really dive into that emotion and immerse yourself in it. And yeah, chakra clearing and muscle testing and emotional stuff that I also do. I do some work with, but they all seem to be just tasks to keep my mind occupied on some level. And the real healing comes from the stillness and the silence and the, being with what is.
Yeah, man, that's you got me on that last bit of your share, just being present. I got goosebumps from that, because it's just so true. Power is in presence, sitting, acknowledging, going, okay, this is me, and it's okay to be me. It really is okay to be me. I can cry, sob like a baby, and I mean, we've both had those cries. I know exactly what you're talking about, and I'm sure there are people out there listening, watching, that they know exactly what you're sharing about, that deep sob, that soul cry, where once you've had that cry, the weight of the world is just lifted. It's like the sense of freedom that you feel, that I felt in my body. You know, the level of groundedness that I feel when I've had those kind of cries. It's like, you know, I've gone to a level where I've really just tapped open something which, you know, I've probably kept under lock and key for so long. And that's the initial phase, you know. Naturally more comes up and you need to deal with like what happens afterwards. But, you know, just that key, to me, it's really important. Presence is key in the stillness, you know. And speaking of that, this morning, you know, before I started with my clients here at the studio, it's beautiful. You know, we've got a beautiful open studio with nice big window panels, and we've got 2 nice chairs, and the morning sun comes in through the front of the studio. And I was just sitting there, and you know, we had some nice acoustic guitar playing in the background, and I was just having my tea, you know, and I just felt the sun on my body. And I just needed, I knew, like, my body was saying, I need some sun, you know. I'm what they call a sun baby. I'm like a lizard. I love being in the sun. And I sat there, and I just like sat there quietly, and, you know, I put my phone away. I didn't want to know anything about it. I put it on silent, and I just sat there holding my tea and just sitting there still. And I just like putting my awareness in my mind, you know, what was coming up, like what's happening for me while I'm just sitting here, focusing on my natural breath, focusing on the ray, the power of the sun, healing my body. And it was just quiet, you know. And there, I'm not saying this happens all the time, but in that moment, it was just quiet, you know. And it was like, you know, and it was like, you know, what do I want? You know, what do I want to create today? You know, how do I want to be? How do I want to present myself in the world today? And that came from, like, you know, what you just shared, man, about being present and just being still and just, you know, not getting distracted, right? Sometimes we need a distraction. Yeah, we all do, right? But there are times we don't need the distraction. There are times when we need to actually just be still and be quiet and just feel and acknowledge and create and say, okay, boom, this is what I want. And just put a smile on your face, and it just put a smile on my face, that's for sure. And I felt really grounded. I felt blessed this morning just to have that. And that's just the power of the sun, right? It's just beautiful.
Yeah, and that's why I was saying, like, it was actually within the distraction gave me the deeper access point, you know, in a weird way. I was just like, no, I'm not going out tonight, but it's only downstairs, so it's not like going out, or it's just, yeah, no, I'm not going anywhere. It's just like, but that was just the kind of the nudge I needed to get into the depth of it. Yeah. And of course, it always depends on what you're processing. I think, you know, like as you say, anger is a pervading one for many people, but because that's quite a deep physical one, stuff like exercise and sort of things like that can be access points to it, and like really getting into the body and stuff. So there's many ways to kind of get to similar places if your intent is to truly dive into it. And so again, what we think we need sometimes could be different than what we actually need. It's just like I was just present to what I was feeling in the moment, and I'm like, no, until last minute. I'm like, yeah, okay, actually maybe company would be good. And it was just the company itself that gave me the access to let go, you know. So in a weird way, it's just like there is no rhyme or reason, just the more you listen to what it is you need in the moment, do you get the awareness of yeah, how to heal that part, you know.
Yeah, and that's the important thing. Like, you know, another way of saying it is you just tuned in to your intuition.
Yeah.
And you didn't listen to your head going, oh, I'm feeling this way. No, I need to be by myself today because it's what I need. You know, there's always, we kind of like try to deceive ourselves or tell ourselves, you know, what's the best thing we need. But then that's like, you know, when you were like quiet enough and you got the information, it was like, you know what? Company is what I need.
Yeah. Because I'm always on my own and alone. So it's just like,
or I need to go exercise. No, it wasn't coming from that space. You come from a space where you tuned in and you listened to intuition. And that's really important, you know, for everyone out there. You know, I hear a lot of people say to me, oh, I don't really trust my intuition, or I wish I could trust my intuition more. And I normally have this response because I've gone through this myself. There's nothing actually to trust. You only need to listen.
Yeah.
Because you're always going to get an answer. The thing is, for a lot of us is, as soon as we do get that answer, we start to give reason to, oh, why it can't happen, or this doesn't make sense, or then we start to put logic, or all of a sudden the brain goes into overdrive, and it just, then your answer that you got is muddled. And then people say, I don't trust my intuition. It's because you're not listening to your intuition. There's nothing to trust. Believe me on that. Just listen. And that's what you did. You listened to your intuition, and you said, I need some company. And you went, that company was an opening, like you're saying. So that was kind of like the gates open for you. Just, and who knows whether it was an energy transfer, whether you made just something about a movement, or who knows what it was, right? We don't even know. You may know. But it just opened up the gates, and you're able to release on that deep level.
Yeah, and not completely slipped my mind. Anyway, yeah, it was trust, the piece on trust. It's like, if there is an element of trust, it's you trust yourself, and that's the only trust that really needs to come within that, because again, it's you almost have to build a relationship with your intuition, because we've always denied it, or we've always kind of shut it down, or we've always been told not to use it from family, or like when you're a kid and you see invisible friends or weird shit like that. So it's like, oh no, don't go down there, So we may have stories of it's not okay to hear that deep part of self. And so, there's nothing to trust as such, but the more you build a healthy relationship with yourself, and yourself to a deep degree, then the intuition becomes a lot easier, because it's clear in the moment when you're listening to your head or your heart. It often tends to be a bit that way. It's like my mind is thinking I need X, Y, Z, and my body or my heart is going, no, you need something else. So it's kind of getting that delineation of like, okay, now's the time to sit with this, now's the time to sit with something else. So it becomes a deep state of knowing self to the degree that you trust you. It's not trust your intuition, because your intuition is just you. Like it's not separate. It's if you're deeply in tune with yourself and how you operate and who you are, and your kind of your go-to pitfalls, or your good bits or your bad bits, you can kind of lean in a different way, as you start to go, that's my habit, this is my pattern. Maybe I'll try something different to heal the thing from a different angle.
Yep. You said it, mate. Know thyself. Know who you are. And when you know who you are, you realize that there's actually saying you don't need, like the word trust it's just already part of knowing who you are. So that's what I mean. That's what I mean by there's nothing to trust. Just listen, because that listening means you're listening to you. You're being you.
Yeah.
And you develop that power of your intuition. You develop that power of you.
Yeah.
And then you just become that. And because you are that.
Yeah.
Right? So there's nothing that you have to. One day when my intuition gets better, I'll do. It's not
that. It's always there. It's always there. It's
always there. So you don't have to trust anything. You just have to listen, and then just listen, and naturally we're going to get caught up. But listen, and just see, and just even if it doesn't make sense, don't worry. It doesn't have to make sense.
Yeah.
Your intuition will never make sense all the time. It's not like your ego and your mind that gives you reason and logic and makes sense for you, so you can come up with a good, analyzed prescription of what the next step is. Intuition doesn't work that way. Intuition is like creativity. It's just creative. It may be a symbol, it may be an image, it may be a thought, word, color, who knows? And then we interpret that symbol. What does this mean? It may not mean anything on the spot. It may come to you later. But what Ben's saying, what I'm saying is just knowing who you are and listening to that, building that up, it becomes clearer, right? It just, all the excess thought and baggage starts to drop off. And then you just got a clearer channel of what's coming through. And yeah, it takes practice, no doubt. You need to practice. You're not going to just wake up one day and be like a full intuitive, master. It takes time to develop that. I mean, geez, we've been doing this stuff for years and we still got to work on it. It just, you got to take the time and just practice like anything.
Yeah, absolutely. It's it's building that internal strength that you've got your own back and you've got whatever is going on for you, whether you like it or you don't. It's just like the ultimate constant in the universe is fluctuation, positive and negative, like polarity. There is always kind of gonna be this element of ups is down as what's down's up, that it's your responsibility to kind of find the way to become the observer of these things and integrate them in a healthy way, that there become a balance between the two, where you're not constantly riding the highs or the lows and in denial of one or the other, and kind of trying to keep staying in a constant state of always ups only. Like there's often that thing that you hear in spirituality. It's just like you shouldn't feel negative emotions or anger or something. Well, load of fucking shit at the end of the day, because it's part of who you are. It's part of who all of us are. So any denial of something is going to lead to it becoming twisted in a different kind of way, because it's suppression. You're trying to suppress something. It's like, so once you start to feel everything and then integrate healthy parts of them, you again stop wallowing in the emotions and just observe them as, this is what I need right now, and this is my state, and this is where I'm at, and that's okay. It doesn't need to be. I mean, it's coming to the surface to be healed for a reason, because it's in the background, like you talked about earlier. The amount of times we've suppressed it in the past, or ignored it, or not wanted to go there, wasn't ready to go there, wasn't time to go there. Now it is, because it's coming up and it's going, hey, I exist. I'm looking to be healed. There's part of you that's affecting your life in some kind of way.
Yeah. Look, I kind of see it like this with what you're sharing. To me, simply, like, I agree with everything you're saying, and whatever you resist is going to persist on some level.
Of course.
And that's, that's like what you're talking about, like in that new age movement, everyone talks about, positive affirmation and positive thinking and all this kind of bullshit. And that will only get you so far.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, lying to yourself will only get you so far before the truth comes.
Yeah.
And when it comes, it's going to come hard, because you've been lying to yourself. So anyone out there look, I don't care if you do positive thinking or affirmations. If that's your thing, that's fine.
Has a time and place.
There's always a time and place. The question is, what's real? Are you listening to what's real and acknowledging? It's important to acknowledge the spectrum of the emotion cycle, spectrum of your life. The spectrum of everything in between. And what it means to you and what you make it mean. A lot of the time, we just make shit mean something. Doesn't mean it's that, right? Because, you may, like, we could be standing on the street somewhere, Ben, and see the same bloke or same girl doing the same thing, and they will mean two different things to us because of our interpretation, our perception, our filters, our mindsets, beliefs, all that sort of stuff.
Yep.
it doesn't mean that it's real. And the person who's doing that is probably wasn't even thinking what we've made it mean.
Totally.
You know, it's important to consider perspective and what we give things meaning and how we make it mean that. Doesn't mean it's true. You may think it's true because you want it to be, but doesn't mean that's the truth. Maybe the reality that you want it to be through these goggles that you're looking through. So it's just a matter of like, well, does it mean this, or am I just making it mean that?
Yeah. I think we might start to wrap it up there, man. Sounds like a good place to leave people to contemplate their own navels within this time frame.
Contemplate your own navel.
What else is there? That's how you know yourself, know thyself. What does it mean to be human?
Man, right?
Yeah.
All right, good chat, Ben. Thanks for
Thank
sharing
you.
what you're going through in your process, and that was really good to hear.
Yeah,
I'm sure all those that are listening, watching, have got something out of this, and you know, feel free to send us a message, what you'd like us to talk about, something you'd like to share. You know, we're always open to that. We're kind of an open book. Just two blokes having a chat about life and what it means to be human. So
absolutely.
We'll catch you guys next time.
Enjoy your navel gazing, and I'll see you again.
See yas.
Thanks.